Okay, in this video we're going to review quickly So What voicings. And just to recap, So What is a 1959 composition by Miles Davis from his iconic, famous, classic jazz album Kind of Blue that came out on Columbia Records in 1959. To this day, it is still the best-selling jazz record of all time. It was one of the most influential and groundbreaking jazz albums in the style of jazz that we now call modal jazz. So modal jazz is jazz that's based on the exploration of contrasting scales, right, modes, rather than on using tonal vocabulary where you have 5-1 progressions and 2 5-1s. So it's a different approach to harmony. And if you want more details about that, take jazz theory and jazz history. But so all we need to know is that we use a different type of voicings very often for modal jazz when compared to tonal jazz. Because in tonal jazz, voice leading is really important, right? Like we've talked a lot about the voice leading in a 2, 5, 1, and the importance of how the thirds and sevens resolve into each other and swap places. Well, modal jazz doesn't have any of that. So it opens up the possibilities of using new voicings. Okay, so in this video, we're just going to look at the So What voicing. This voicing was so popular and so hip after this recording that people now use it in a lot of other different scenarios, and people just refer to it as the So What voicing. So what we need to know is that the form of So What is very simple. It's 32 measures in an AABA phrase structure. Okay, so if it's 32 measures and there's 4 sections, very simple math, each section lasts 8 measures. The A sections are all one chord, only one chord, and that is D minor. And you could call it D minor 7, but it's actually more correct, I would say, to call it D minor 13, as we're going to find out in a minute, because there's actually a lot of upper structures in the voicings. Okay, so that means you've got AABA. That means that 16 bars at the beginning are all D minor with a natural 13, and the last 8 bars. So the bridge, the B section, which is that third 8-bar phrase, that is the exact same thing, it's just up a half step, okay, which is going to be E flat minor 7, E flat minor 13. So if it's minor 13, let's look at it in D, right? That means it's D minor, right? And in jazz, it's also minor 7, obviously, right? And then it's D minor 13, right? So we're almost always going to do 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, right? So for this chord, it's 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7, 9. And if we add a 13, it's the B, right? 13 is the same as the 6. So when you've got these notes, it's definitely D Dorian. That's your only mode option, right? Because that's the only minor scale, right, that's got flat 3, of course, otherwise it wouldn't be minor. It's the only minor scale that's got flat 3, flat 7, and natural 6, right? Because remember, Aeolian has a flat 6, that's more the classical minor. Dorian is more of the jazz minor. And it can't be melodic or harmonic minor, right? Because melodic has a natural 7. And harmonic minor has a flat 6 and a natural 7. Sorry. All right, so if you know that there's a flat third, a flat 7, and a natural 13, that's enough information to tell you it has to be Dorian. Okay, So What has this famous iconic bass line, right, that goes... Right, sorry, my E didn't speak there. Right? So that's kind of the melody, actually. And the horn players just play a little riff that goes... And that's the So What part, right? So what? So it's a little call and response between the bass, which plays the melody, and the horns go, so what? Okay. So let's look at the exact piano voicings that the great legendary jazz piano player Bill Evans used on this song. So he uses, it's kind of a combination of a quartal and a triad upper structure, okay? And by the time you're seeing this video, we will have covered at least one of these topics, if not both of them. And we'll cover both of them before the end of the semester. So quartals, Q-U-A-R-T-A-L, is stacked fourths, right? Okay? And a triad upper structure is exactly what it sounds like. It's a triad, right? Usually a major triad. So for example, if I wanted to voice, let's say, for example, B flat minor 7, I could just do my root here, right? my 7th and my 3rd, my flat 7 and my 3rd. And then I would look for a triad that's going to, a major triad that's going to fit up here. Well, it just so happens that the major triad built from the flat 3 works really well. So I can do D flat major triad here. So this is a voicing with what we would call a triad upper structure, right? I've got my 3rd and my 7th, flat 3 and flat 7 because it's minor 7, and I've got a D flat major triad up here. Okay, so the so what voicing, the bottom half looks like a quartal, right? Built from E, and you're going to see why we're building it from E in a second. Okay, and then the top half, if you look at it by itself, all I'm going to do is add a B right here. So the top half looks like a G major triad, right, in second inversion, right? 5, 1, 3 in the key of G major. So here's a G major triad, second inversion, and the bottom half looks like a quartal built from E, right? 4th, 4th, 4th. Okay, so I'm going to take this whole voicing and just plane it down diatonically. Okay, so planing, P-L-A-N-I-N-G. In music, planing means that you take a shape and you just move it around, keeping the intervals constant. Okay, so very popular in classical music with composers like Debussy, for example, and in jazz we use it a lot. So it's called planing because it's like a metaphor from geometry, right? In geometry, if you have a flat plane, right, you would just imagine you're moving along the flat plane. Okay, so that's why we call this planing. So of course there's two types of planing, because I'm going to keep my interval shapes constant, right? So like this. So I can diatonically plane, which means I'm staying in the same key. So if I'm starting with a tritone and a perfect 4th here, right? If I'm going to diatonically plane, I'm going to stay in the key. So let's say I'm in the key of C, right? So I can diatonically plane. Of C major. So what this means is that the specific intervals will change a little bit, except in general they're all kind of 4ths, right? Perfect 4th, augmented 4th, right? But then here it becomes all perfect 4ths, all perfect 4ths, augmented 4th, perfect 4th. So because I'm staying in one key, it's not perfectly symmetric, but you guys get the idea, right? I'm taking this shape and I'm moving it around. I'm planing it diatonically. You could also plane chromatically. So let's take this. So now it's 2 perfect 4ths. So if I planed it chromatically, I would literally always keep it constant. Perfect 4ths only. Right? And even if I skip notes, so if I go from here to here, and then to here, right, we would still call all of this chromatic planing. Because even though I'm skipping some intervals, I'm taking the same shape, the same structure, and literally transposing it around chromatically, as opposed to taking a structure and transposing it around diatonically. Okay, so that's exactly what so what does. We start with this voicing, and we're going to plane it down in our key, which is D Dorian minor, which the parent scale, of course, is C major. Just play from D, right? And so you can see we hit every single note in the mode, right? Right, so here we've got E, A, D, G, B, right, which is going to be the 2, the 5, the root, the 4, and the 6, or the 13. And then when we plane it down, we get a wonderful D minor 7 add 4 voicing, right? I've got my 4th added, or my 11th, you can call it either one, flat 7, flat 3, and the 5th. So now I've got root 4, flat 7, flat 3, 5. So between these two voicings, we've hit every white note at least once, right? So it signals to the ear that we are 100% in the key of D Dorian minor. We're in this mode. There can be no doubt about it because we're hitting every single one of those notes. Okay? So those are the so what voicings, right? So for the target chord that you're trying to land on, right, you build it from the root because we're trying to do a D minor. So you do a quartal up from the root, right? And then you add the 5th on top. That's one way to think about it. another way to think about it is you do a quartal from the root, and then on top you're going to do a major triad in second inversion built from the flat 3. All right, so above D, I've got my flat 3, F, and I'm doing a major triad, but I'm doing it in second inversion. All right, F major triad right there. So that's so what? So what? And as a matter of fact, these upper structure triads, the G major to the F triad, that's what the horn players are playing. All right, so the bass goes, and the horns go. And of course, Bill Evans, the piano player, plays the whole voicing. Right. So of course, when we go to the B section, it's the exact same thing, but up a half step. Right, and then so now it's an A flat major triad on top of F and B flat. Right, that we playing down in E flat, Dorian minor, right, which is the same thing as D flat major but played from E. So we're taking this exact same idea and just moving the whole thing up a half step, right? Sorry. It's a little hard to reach with the camera stand in the way. So, there you go. So what? So once again, I'm doing a quartal from the root, and on top of my quartal from the root is major triad in second inversion built from the flat 3. And I'm taking that whole thing and planing it diatonically in the key of E flat Dorian minor. Okay, so that's your so what voicings for you to review. Start practicing them in all 12 keys.